Hello, everyone. Good evening for those of us who are in this part of the world, and good day to everyone else. We're here today with Rômulo. By the way, I hope that was the right pronunciation. You'll
Great.
correct me later if not. And we're here to talk today about design ops. And very interestingly, I saw this post from Rômulo that was mentioning he's starting to get into this topic, or he's been getting into this topic. And also is, of course, a conversation designer, or has been in the space for a while, and also a friend of the conversations community. So I thought, yeah, we should just talk about this. I don't know a lot about design ops and all that is connected to it. And I feel like more and more I've also been thinking like, oh, I should really like read up on this topic. It would probably benefit me a lot to know about those concepts. So yeah, this is what the session will be. It will be just like one-on-one. So also we will probably keep it shorter, but like, let's see how it goes. If you have questions, comments, as always, please leave them here. We're very much looking forward to make this a conversation. And with that, I'll pass the mic to you, Romulo, if you want to give us an introduction.
Yes, sure. Hi, everyone. Very nice to be here. I'm Rômulo, as Julia mentioned, friend of the pod. My second time here. I'm a conversation designer, or as my organization, Parloa, likes to call us, agent architects. And very recently, I've stumbled upon design ops and program management. I was really fascinated by it, how we can actually bring organization into conversation design, into design to really power up the stuff that we can deliver. And being part of this journey has been very fascinating. And it just happened that the stars aligned, that Julia had, hey, wouldn't you like to just come try out a new format, see how we can really talk about this topic that is really coming up more recently in design in general, and very, very soon also going to catch conversation design by storm. So I think it's a very good starting point for us to kick the ball and see, okay, what is actually design ops, program management, and how can we actually benefit from it in the conversation design world?
Yeah, indeed. I'm sure like we'll be hearing a lot more about this topic, so better get ahead of it. You kind of served me like my first question to you like on a silver plate, because I mean, just to give us some definition of like what space we're thinking about and talking about today, what is design ops actually?
Yeah, so design ops is design operations, of course, but at the end of the day, it's still design. So what we're trying to do is really trying to come up with processes, come up with improvements in the design teams that not only increase the quality of the design that we're delivering at the end, but also trying to make the design and our work more scalable at the end of the day. Um, Design ops kind of like tries to take a look on the processes that we currently have in place and what are processes that are maybe lacking and we need to add to it. It also takes a look at what kind of platforms do we currently use in our work. And of course, at the heart of everything, it takes a look at the people. Who are the designers working in their teams? What are their skills? And are there any things we can do so that our designers can take the next step to be even greater, right? So by taking a look at basically these three major points, design ops then come and say, okay, the things that we're currently working at, um, are those the right things,
Mm,
right? Are we doing the right approach here? And if not, how can we then improve this approach so that we can continuously get better? So, as you can imagine, it's a very iterative process, right? That has a lot to do with the design methodology that we know, because design is its genesis an iterative process. So, design op being a design discipline, we also see this reflection there.
that's super interesting. And Yeah, I think it's also like making me think similarly to how if you don't have a designer, there's someone who's deciding on a design whether you want it or not. If you don't have someone thinking about design ops, probably there's some design ops happening whether you want it or not. Like someone is making a decision about a process, but not consciously, which is even worse, kind of, because then you might have as well done it in a conscious way. Um, Interesting.
Yeah, and I think this also brings like to the point like when does design ops starts, right?
Mhm.
And I think that this is basically what you do. It's like design ops is happening at all times, because even though we might not be thinking specifically about a process, right? We are doing processes. We're all trying to do things in the best way possible. So I think it's very empowering that we designers can say, wait a second, no. We are going to be able to decide which are the processes that we want to take. And but then we also take like the bad side of it is that, okay, if we are taking care of this, if we are the ones to decide how we do stuff, which stuff do we do, we also need to be able to prove at the end that our hypotheses were correct, that we're actually going in a positive direction. And if we aren't, that we can pivot quite quickly and try something new.
Mhm. Nice. Yeah, makes sense. I think, um, yeah, we talked about processes, platforms, people, so
Mhm.
trifecta. And I wanted to get your sense of like, is there like, from what you know, like in the discipline, like a sense of like which one will break first, and we'll get kind of the signal of like, hey, we need to give some thought to this element, and maybe have a design ops discipline, maybe have a person dedicated, and so on.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the good thing or the bad thing is that they all break. So there is always something that we can try to fix, something that we can try to work on. But definitely processes, right? They are the ones that go badly almost instantly, so to say. Um, so, for example, if we see that um, yeah, we're trying to do something, but then we see everyone does it in a different way, or that we do maybe try to bring a process together, but no one is following this process, right? Um, that's what we see almost daily. And this is something where we can then put our designer hats on, and
Mhm.
then we can really grab things from our design methodology toolbox, right? So if a process is not being adopted, so if we think that my process is my product, so basically the product that I have designed is not the correct one for my users, right? So we can then go on listening tours, really try to take a look. What do people think differently about the process? What are their pain points? What are their needs? And then we can go into this ideation phase of like this prototype phase where we can then create different versions of these processes, which we can then also experiment on, right? It's not that we should think of a process as something that is set in stone, but something that is evolving to really accommodate the needs of our users. So if we see after a brief experiment that like, no, this process is still not it, let's just iterate it. Let's just change something. So yeah, processes definitely one of the biggest things and what breaks the most. But we also see, like in the other, as I mentioned before, we also see the problems in the other areas, right? So if we're talking about platforms, for example, right? Um, and of course, this depends a bit in what kind of organization do you work. If you work like as a conversation designer, but more as a product designer within a company that only has one product, or if you're working on a design agency where you're being torn between 15 projects at the same time, right? Um, then there come questions on the platforms, for example, like, okay, in my company, to do conversation diagrams, right? We use Miro, but we also use Microsoft Visio. So which one of these is really the correct one that really fits our needs? Do we need to have both, really? right? So really to find out the correct platforms, the correct ways, tools to do our job. And also when it comes to people, for example, we can think, for example, about onboarding, something that affects all of us, right? Do we designers get not only the correct information when we join, do we also get the access to all the systems that we have to do? Are we on a good position to be put up to speed quickly enough that we can start performing? And I think also something that is quite interesting is what does a senior conversation designer mean, right? Of course, there is the difference between companies, but even within one company, what does that mean? Is the differentiator between a professional conversation designer, a junior, and a senior, right? So those are all questions that not only aggregate to the working of the team, but also to the team morale, right? Because you really want to know, oh, this is where I stand. I'm working on the correct things, and things that I'm doing are creating a very positive effect on our team as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because, like, really, like, I'm thinking of all those things and, like, yes, like, team morale, also, like, how, frictionless your job becomes has such an effect on how much you can focus also on just doing your job and not having, like, half-baked solutions here and there that you're like, "Oh, yeah, like, I don't know, when things slow down, I'll work on this," and things never slow down, so you never work on it, so the friction is always
Yeah.
there. It's
And
really
I think also quite interesting, as we were talking right before the session, right, about like conversation design in general, how it's still growing in the world, right? But even this question of visibility, that a lot of conversation designers still struggle to get their work being seen. I mean, designers in general, let alone conversation designers, right? So having this the serenity of knowing, okay, we're definitely working on the correct thing and we can measure the impact that we have. This really helps bring visibility for everyone.
That's true. That's so true. Yeah, like now that you're mentioning, you're looking into this practice as a whole, of course, but it's very interesting to understand how it connects to conversation designers, and also what we maybe as conversation designers can start adopting and maybe like leveraging from the discipline. Do you have any advice on this area of like practices or things you can test out as a conversation designer that come from DesignOps?
Yeah, definitely. So in design ops, there is this belief that whatever we do needs to be connected to a greater good. And this greater good, of course, are what does the company wants to achieve? What is the mission of the company? What is the goal, right? So whatever we would like to implement internally as a process in conversation design should be something that also matches or also moves towards the same goals of the company. So let us say a very basic goal of a company. Okay, we want to get more money because we want to grow the company, right? So even though we as designers sometimes we are idealists and we do want to work and make great design, we also need to have a little bit of a business mindset of saying, okay, we can have our cake and eat it too, right? How can I have great design but also work towards this idea of the company, right? So there we see, okay, what are the things that are hindering us for maybe helping the company? What are the things that we should be doing? If the idea is, okay, we need to deliver faster, right? Then we have pretty much a big how might we there, how might we deliver faster? And then we can try to do, for example, a system mapping. Okay, what are the things that are stopping us from delivering faster? And of course, we won't be able to take care of everything because there are things that are outside of the control of the conversation designer. But whatever thing that we can do moves us in this correct direction, right? And by doing that, by having a overview of what are the problems, we can also pick up the stuff that is very specific to conversation design. For example, conversation design is very ephemeral, so to say. While our colleagues that do graphic design, they have wireframes, they have things that are visual, things that you can click on. Conversation design, you have like ideas, you have like flows of a conversation that might happen. Or even now in this world of large language models, we have like prompts. And we have prompts in a way that everyone writes prompts differently, because prompts is an expression of natural language, and we're not robots to be able to write a prompt exactly like our colleague. So here, it really brings up this idea, like when we're talking about a good conversation, what is actually a good conversation? Can we try to quantify it? Can we try to create our own standards where we say, for example, if I need to implement a use case X, okay, we know that from our experience that this works, that we can do, for example, do an authentication in this way. And by doing this, we're doing better design, because we as designers, we're exchanging with each other. But also by having these guidelines, we're improving the speed in which we deliver, because I know I have a much better starting point of implementing a certain use case. So by really thinking about what are the challenges that we have as conversation designers, we can pick them apart, and then we can come up with solutions that are tailored to the specific challenges that we have.
Interesting. Yeah, it's such a very useful. It's like I'm struggling with the tension of like, this seems so useful, and it seems like even more useful when you have like situations like you said, conversation design is even like less visible. Would love to have like more love on the design ops side, so that we can get better at doing things like faster and like creates visibility and so on. At the same time, it's like the struggle is like, you have, I don't know, a few conversation designers. It's so unlikely that you'll have like a design ops person that is like there to help them and like do all the things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think conversation designers need to become design ops experts as well.
But I think that, to be honest, I think that having people that do design ops as a job, right? This is a little bit of an utopia in design. I think that there are very few companies that do it, and most likely those are going to be the companies that are very, very big, right? Where they can then really, where they have so many designers that they really need people to just focus on taking care of the processes, taking care of how people work. It's basically like, if you see like more companies have business operation managers, right? But also then when we compare how many, for example, account executives, how many salespeople they have, many more than the design team, right? So normally in these smaller teams, which design makes part of, what we have is that people pick up design ops initiatives on the side. Normally what we see is that it's the design manager or like the team lead who does a lot of the design ops initiatives, or like the more senior colleagues. However, we see that as soon as the team starts to grow more and more, right, more things need to be into place. So we really see that these design managers then struggle, because the operation part of their work is growing, but the managerial part of their work is growing as well. So that when they add up to much more time than what they actually have to work. So when we see the growth of these teams, we see then an increase in the need of a design ops person, which we'll probably not get, right? So at the end, we really need to see, okay, how can we share this responsibility among the team members? And even more important, I think, is what we were mentioning in the beginning, right? Making sure we're focusing on the right initiatives. We're not going to have time to do 50 initiatives in a quarter, for example. But if we really narrow down to 3, 4, really work on it and really do this iterative process so we can have good results at the end, step by step, we're going to be increasing the quality of our team, right? And we also be able to be working on different initiatives as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I like your perspective. It makes sense that it's like, it's hard to have a designated person, but like you can find ways of incorporating it. And in the end, it makes sense to try to incorporate it, because otherwise you're left to, yeah, what we were saying at the beginning, just like fate decides how things will go.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. I also like that in your post, when I read that DesignOps helps, or like the course you took, it helps with understand how DesignOps can help you influence decision making, handle stakeholders. So I was wondering if you have any examples, or if like maybe a situation where you feel like having DesignOps like in your toolkit and like the understanding you now have helped you that get this done, like get more buy-in about something, or like have more influence that you feel like otherwise you wouldn't have been able to go for.
Yeah, sure. And I think one of the things that I'm very passionate about is that it's not only the exchange between colleagues, but that also bringing knowledge to other colleagues as well, and really fostering this experience, this realm, or this environment where we can teach each other, get better from each other, right? And to me, it started with a little bit of a listening tour, basically asking my colleagues, hey, for example, like Parloa is a software as a service company, so we are working with the Parloa platform. So to me, it was like going to my colleagues and say, hey, when we're using our platform, right, do you feel any kind of knowledge gap? Are there things that you say like, oh, okay, yeah, I know we have this in the platform, but I haven't really had the chance to work in it. So I don't really, I know theoretically how it works, but I don't have like the savoir-faire. I don't have the know-how. So by gathering this, I can then think of ideas. How can I tackle this kind of decisions? I can then come up with, let's say, 3 different ideas how I would like to do it. Let's say one idea is I'm not gonna do nothing, and my colleagues are gonna learn how to use our platform as the projects need. I can then say, oh, I can, maybe we can try to do something asynchronous. We can try to just write documentation about the features. Or then, oh, maybe we do something that is hands-on, right? We can do a hackathon, for example. I can, of course, then prepare these 3 different options, how we can tackle this. I can then bring this to managers and then say, hey, I have an idea. This is the problem statement. I think we can solve this. These are 3 different ways I thought how we can get out of this hole. And this one, for example, in my case, were the hackathons. This is the way that I would prefer. I would love to try it out. And then if I get an yes, we can try this out, I also need to show my managers that whatever I chose brought good results, right? So I also need to think, okay, what are the things that I can use as measurement for success for this initiative, right? For example, did I get a good job from my colleagues, right? Were my colleagues later, when they faced some implementation, they said, oh, I had such a better way getting into the topic because I had seen this beforehand. So here is really this idea of finding out what we want to do. And I know I'm repeating myself, but finding out what we want to do, what are the possibilities that we have, and how can we measure this? And this we also see like within, it doesn't really need to be a design ops initiative, even when we're talking about design projects, right, with our customers. So if we're talking about, I have different ways of designing this conversation. We can either do 1, 2, or 3, right? This is my hypothesis for 1, for 2, for 3. How can we try this out? at the end of the day, is the same logic behind it. It's really this idea of creating the hypothesis, experimenting on it, and then taking a look at the results. Sometimes you're like, oh my God, I'm such a great designer. I did it. And sometimes you just like need to humble yourself and you say like, oh, okay, maybe those weren't the best ideas. Let's try something new.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I'm trying to think like I don't see a reason why conversation designers or we wouldn't want to like get into it, because it feels like also just like the example you brought makes me think it just sparks idea, like being knowledgeable about design ops as a topic. It sparks an idea of like, oh, like maybe you saw that feature, like let's imagine in the past, but you were like, oh, whatever, like maybe I'll just nudge my colleague and let them know it exists, but like this doesn't have the impact that thinking through the problem and being like, oh, okay, like these are the ways we could solve it and so on has. And knowing that this process exists, or like this way of working exists, is also like making you think about potential problems to solve in a way. So it's kind of recursive.
It is. That's also what I feel, right? I feel really inspired when I think of it, because then, as you mentioned, like so many ideas pop up in our heads. Oh, maybe we could take care of this. Maybe we could take care of that. Or, oh, I think that if we take care of, if we tackle this, this would bring us so much visibility. But I think we're often also plagued that we don't have time to take care of that, right? And that's the thing. We don't have sometimes the leadership power to simply say, okay, no, we're going to take 20% of our time to really work on strategic topics. And then 80% we're going to do our design work, right? Mm-hmm. And this is one of the core ideas of of design ops, is that you don't lead by leadership, you lead by influence. Mm-hmm. So it's basically this never-ending battle, or like this never-ending trial to show that, listen, I had some free time, I applied here, and this is bringing good results. So we can expand this more and more, right? And this is, I think, then the challenge that we have as designers, that we say, oh, we do see that if conversation design is becoming such a big thing, we also want to be more professionals, so to say, right? We want also to have more structure and so on. So let's also try to do it. And unfortunately, I think this is still like a big battle that we have to fight, right? But I think that by taking this swing and saying like, no, we are professionals, our discipline is growing, and we're becoming more fixed, we're becoming more robust, more well-known, then this would also bring the improvements that we would like to see in our daily lives as conversation designers.
Yeah, very true. It's been a nascent role and discipline for a long time, and it's like maybe it's the moment we grow up and get the structure. It's that, and it's also at the same time as I'm saying this, I'm thinking I've been seeing here and there the argument of like design ops, like it's like over bureaucratizing, like once you start like creating processes and like this is the way to do it, and maybe it's like not really leaving the space for creativity, or like to approach things as like they like your gut instinct tells you to approach, and so on. So just to be also like a little bit provocative here, what do you think about this argument?
Yeah, I think that this actually, design ops is very self-critical, so to say. As I as I was talking about, for example, the whole enablement thing, right? I was also mentioning like, okay, one of the options should be do nothing, right? Because this is, and I think this is the really the main point here. Design ops is not there to add processes when these processes are not needed. It's right on the contrary. Sometimes we have a gentleman's agreement we all do things in some certain kind of way, and it works. And honestly, if it works, then it works. We don't need to touch it, right? But sometimes we see that, oh yeah, some discussions, they keep popping up the whole time, right? For example, if you work on an agency, oh, billing, right? How do we do the billing of the the design projects? And this is in every project the same conversation. So there is a something where we see, okay, clearly we have some kind of need here. So maybe would then profit from a process here. So design ops is really there just to create processes when it's needed. And if it's not, or even if it's not going to bring us that much of a benefit, then let's just ignore this for now. And I think this, if you guys or like the viewers have worked with Scrum, right? And I think this has a lot to do with Scrum as well. Scrum, you try to take a look, okay, what are the most important tasks that we have right now? And then if the tasks are not important, sometimes we just forget this task because people say, if it's important, it's going to bubble up at some point eventually again. And then we can take a look at this again. And with design ops, we also see this principle, right? Take a look first at what is more pressing, and then the rest, at some point, we're going to take care of it. We're only people at the end, right? We only have so much time. So let's focus right now on what actually brings value.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like this is a little bit of a misconception maybe I also had around this topic. Do you think there's any other misconceptions that you would like to clarify around design ops?
Misconceptions. Good question. I don't know if the discipline is well known enough to have so many misconceptions, right? Because I think that, right, when people listen to design ops first, it's really this what you mentioned, like, oh, we're just gonna have more administrative work to do. It's just like, oh, I need to write some documentation, I need to write something down, and at the end of the day, this is not gonna help me at all. And I think that maybe if this is a misconception, is this that design ops, once a process is done, it is set in stone. No, it's a living thing that needs to be changed, and that needs to be revisited also regularly. The things that we have done, for example, 1 year ago, are those still relevant? If not, can we cut it, or should we change it? Really, to keep our team as lean as possible, working as best as it can.
And I think for conversation design, the changes are continuous and always present, so there's no lack of work in that area.
Yeah, but also, like, how do we organize like a prompt library, right? How do we, or even, okay, if we have some kind of specific challenge in prompting, right? So maybe what I know sometimes I struggle with, right? If we're trying to teach, I'm going to be very careful in how I formulate this. If we're trying to teach the model how to do a logical decision in a flow, right? Which, as we all know, the model isn't thinking. So we need to kind of like really try to prime the model to give us some kind of right prediction in some kind of scenario. Okay, so if we need to take care of these kind of logical solutions, which would be very easy to do by code, but we need to do it via prompt. How can we tackle this, right? What are the tools that we have to really be effective there? And I think this is, for example, one of the problems that a design team might have. And it might be very useful to then really see how do we tackle this. Is a page on Confluence enough? So should we do an enablement with the team? And there we really see even the small wins. Those are things that we can definitely also tackle with design ops.
That's very cool. Yeah. It's really like making me think like the areas and surfaces of things, like with prompting, with things, and like as leading theories change, also like, oh, like one day someone is like, oh, this really works right now, then there's a new piece of research saying like this absolutely doesn't work, this with the new models we have now, this is now the new way of doing prompting, and so on. Like that's a job in itself. I don't know how we could do it, like to always keep up with these things and then adapt our processes to these things. It's a lot of
Yeah.
work.
And I think, yeah, definitely. And it also like reflects a little bit the new responsibilities that conversation design has. I think that in the past we had a stronger schism between what designers do and what developers do.
Hmm.
And right now, things are coming a little bit closer. Not only that designers are now also doing implementations, but designers are now also responsible for quality assurance, especially conversation designers, right? I know a few conversation designers that have the luxury of having someone else test their prompts. I can tell you that I'm testing my own prompts, right? So
Hmm.
also getting into this mentality, okay, what does it mean to be a good tester? How can I write good tests? How can I work with deterministic or with LLM as a judge evaluations? How does that work? And how can I, at the end of the day, also know, okay, my agent is working very well, and I have the data to back it up, right? How can we get into this mentality? And this is really being then proactive in tackling a challenge that conversation designers have, but that by really taking a look of, okay, what do we do right now, and what are the things that could improve our work, are that by taking a look at this problem through a design ops mentality, you can really say, okay, there might be 2 3 different ways that I can try to tackle this problem, and then yeah, make it better.
Yeah. I think design ops to me sounds like it creates just like a space also for like the thinking of it, because it's a lot of times like with moving fast, like we're iterating fast on things and so on. You lack the space to really step back and say, like, what are the options? Like, what is the best course of action? Do we need to do this? Do we not need to do this? It's just like creating the room for like exploring that before going like, okay, we're going with that fast.
Yeah, it's kind of a state of mind, right? It's like a way to tackle problems, and I think that this is, as I mentioned, I don't think we'll suddenly have design ops practitioners right and left, but I think that we can all take design ops methodology a little bit to heart and really try to see the problems from a different angle. Try to really come up with alternatives how we can solve this, and really um, tackle all of these team internal struggles that we have as design projects at the end, right? Like really trying to ideate, go on a writing hypotheses, go on a listening tour, try to take a look at the pain points of your users, and we know how to do that.
That is true. That is true. That's a good way to frame it. And yeah, I would say as we're already getting over time, I wanted to ask one last question.
Yes.
That is, yeah, you've been dipping your toe in the space, and I don't know, like you've been exploring a lot of resources and so on. And I'm curious if, like, what's next for you? Do you want to go deeper? Like, do you have any project like where you're already thinking like, "Ooh, this is like sparking my design ops brain"?
Yes, there's a lot of stuff, and a lot of internal stuff,
Yeah.
and I think this fire, that has been lit. It makes me be brazen and kind of like say, hey, I do see these things, and I do think that we can improve that. And I think this gives me also a little bit more of a courage, to tackle these things. And I think at the end of the day, those are things that make good designers, right? I think that good designers, they need always to be a little bit forward in what they think. And I also think that designers need to be a little bit also prideful in the work that they're done, because I mean, you need to believe that what you're doing is good,
Mm.
um, to actually make bold decisions and really think of the customer, right? Yes, you need to be to have the to be also in the position to acknowledge that maybe your decision wasn't the best, but that's where design methodology comes from, right? So I think that really what I'm going to do from now on, and what I'm also trying to do, is really see where do I think things are failing. Maybe even try to map out, okay, if I see a problem, what are the possible roots of this problem, and what are the parts that I can really influence. And then really do this until I'm tired and until I retire, right? It's really a shift in how I see team collaboration, how I see my work as a designer. It's not only designing the products for my customers, it's also thinking about, okay, how do we as a team work together?
I love it. This is very cool. You've inspired me to take an even bigger dip into this topic, and I hope you've inspired other people who hopefully tuned in today. Yeah, thank you so much, Romulo. Oh, I see. You're gone. And thanks everyone for listening in. Oh, there he is.
So sorry, I clicked the wrong button.
There's some design lesson about this button positioning. But yeah, thank you so much. That's just what I was saying. So
Thank
great.
you for having me. Always a blast to come here, talk to you. Always great.
Nice. Thank you very much. And for everyone listening, we'll have some other sessions coming up soon. So stay tuned for that. Thank you. Ciao.
Bye.